Every life has a story, and every story is worth sharing. Your story, my story, and our story speak of victory and defeat, joy and sorrow, resilience and vulnerability. They are not just our story, they are Christ's story in us. They are Kingdom Stories from Down Under.
"11 years ago, he left South Africa to establish himself into a brand new land in Australia with his wife, with his beautiful children, not knowing what the future entails, but fully trusting in the Lord to begin a life of ministry, a kingdom life in Australia. And tonight we're privileged to have at Kingdom Stories from Down Under, Pastor Peet Palm. Peet Palm from Kingsway Church. How are you, Peet?
I'm well, thank you, Nat.
11 years in Australia.
Yes, I can't believe it's been that long already. It feels like yesterday, but on the other side, it also feels like a lifetime. So,
Did you pack in a lot of life in 11 years?
oh, very much so. We arrived here when our kids were pretty young. My kids started their secondary school education, and now I already have 2 grandkids. So there's a lot of life in between those 2 things.
It's funny how we measure life by the age of the kids.
It is so true. It is so true.
By what happened in their life, because so much happens in such a short period, especially if they're teenagers, They have their career, they finish the school, the career, they get married. So event after event, you're never bored.
Yeah.
But you do look a bit young to be a grandpa.
I am maybe a bit young in most people's eyes to be a grandpa, but you know what? I've always believed in starting anything and everything early as I could. I start the day early. I got married early, and I had kids early. That was was through lack of planning. That was my desire from the very beginning.
Wonderful.
To start out young and to make sure that I'm young so I can enjoy my kids. And if I have to do it again, I'll do it all over the same.
Who's a pioneer in your family, your dad or your mum? Who was?
Pioneer, Dad, very much so.
Okay, so you must have inherited a bit of his DNA.
I think it's
breaking new ground.
The whole family's like that. My dad is. He was one of 11 kids. There were 5 boys and 6 girls.
Whoa.
And all 5 of them had their own businesses. All of them started that from scratch. So you mentioning that in terms of pioneering or starting or building something has always been part of the Palm family.
Where did the Palm family originate?
In Germany.
Okay.
History-wise, it was
both
Germany.
mom and dad?
No, actually. Mom, to be honest with you, we could only trace the South African bits of it, van Niekerk, but originally the surname comes as a Dutch derivative, but Palm comes from a German background.
So your dad came from 11 children?
Yeah.
And how many did he have?
5.
5, almost halfway. And where are you?
I am second.
Second.
I got one sister older than me, 2 years older than me.
Yeah.
And then 3 other sisters younger, 1 2 years younger than me, and then twin sisters that they live in Adelaide at the moment, also Aussies at this stage.
Yes.
But they are 5 years younger than me.
So you had a bit of a leading role as well as a boy in the family.
I would say leading role, maybe. I would more say I had a very cushy childhood. My sisters were very good to me.
Spoiled you.
I was spoiled. I can't even say anything else. Not so much by mom and dad, but my sisters really, they were really good to me.
Yeah, I grew up with 5 sisters as well.
Do you know what I mean?
Youngest of 7.
Oh man, so you know even more about that than me.
My brother is 11 years older than me.
Yeah, well.
So he was out of the picture. I don't remember much of him because he was just so far apart.
Yeah.
But especially with the nearest to me, the couple of sisters that were close to me.
Yeah.
One you've met tonight here.
Yeah.
We were very close, and you're right. I was cushioned as well. I had it good. I still have it good.
I might have been the second oldest, but still, I mean, it's just I grew up in a house full of girls, and even with my kids, I mean, I have 3 kids, and the 2 girls are the 2 oldest ones.
Yes.
So it was very much almost a girly home. I had
Again.
that when I grew up, and a girly home again.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's just part of God's grace and God's blessing of my life. I don't know.
Well, I've got 2 girls and the third one on its way.
Oh, there we go.
So I'm gonna have 3 girls as well and 1 boy, which is great. But it's good. We love the women in our lives. So important. So where did it begin for you? In South Africa? Which part?
Well, I grew up. Most people know Johannesburg. So
Sure.
Johannesburg, central parts of South Africa, a place close to Johannesburg called Springs.
Okay.
I was born in Springs. For those that know South Africa, the East Rand area. So I grew up in Springs and Brakpan area.
English
all my
speaking
life.
or
no,
Afrikaans?
very much Afrikaans. Afrikaans community, Afrikaans family, Afrikaans household, so an Afrikaans school. So English is very much my second language, you know. So
third after speaking Italian.
Yeah,
probably.
but true. But yeah, so no, I didn't grow up near the coast. I grew up in central parts of South Africa. Today, a very busy part of South Africa. There's a lot of communities, a lot of different cultures, a lot of people. A lot of.
So Spring is a town or an area?
It's a town. It's I think most probably a city by now.
Yeah.
But it's a mining town.
What are they mining?
Gold.
Gold.
There's a lot of gold around the East Rand area.
So is it quite a prosperous town?
Not anymore. A lot of the gold that was mined there, a lot of the gold mines closed down later on as the gold were mined and so on. Yeah. So at this stage, Springs area, I wouldn't say a very affluent area.
Sure.
But at one stage, very, very beautiful, affluent place.
What's your first memory of childhood?
My first memory of childhood, most probably be I was... I think it was about the first picture I can remember of my childhood. I was on my birthday with a blue flannel tracksuit.
Yes.
And was on my birthday, and my dad bought me a leather Super Springbok rugby ball.
Whoa!
Right, that's my first. I would say very profound
5 or 6
memory. No, I think it was younger, maybe 4 or 5.
4 or 5
around there.
Okay.
And I remember this photo specifically, and I remember how I felt, with my foot on the rugby ball, being very proud of my first rugby ball, And at that stage, it was still no synthetics; it was still leather.
Yeah,
it was heavy when it rained, So. And it smelled like
the leather.
New rugby.
But it must have been a very expensive ball, because I remember even when we grew up, if you had a proper soccer ball, you would have paid a day's wage at least.
Now, to have a rugby ball as a young boy in South Africa is rugby crazy.
Sure.
So if you can afford a rugby ball, you buy a rugby ball. But it was actually something to be very proud of. So you would take that to school.
You'd be popular
to crash or whatever.
with your friends.
It will be, if you had the ball, you were the one calling the shots. So I was very proud of that rugby ball. That's something I can remember. That, and I think a lot of my childhood memory, I can remember a lot of instances as a very young boy, even before I went to school, working with my dad in his workshop.
What was he doing?
My dad was a mechanical engineer. He's actually an automotive engineer.
Okay.
So crankshaft grinding, reboring, redoing cylinder heads, valves and guides and so on. So
we don't do those anymore.
No. You just plug and play nowadays. Just buy something new. But back then, I know I wasn't even at school yet when I was able to resurface a valve.
Wow.
And grind a valve seat. So those were the first things in my dad's workshop I could do, and so on. So we were always there and thereabouts.
Was he tough on you?
My dad was tough on me. No, I wouldn't say tough on me. My dad's a very straightforward kind of a guy.
Sure.
I didn't say something twice. Mm-hmm. So if that's called tough, maybe nowadays, tough. But a very, very firm guy, very loving, very family orientated.
Yeah.
I remember my dad we always had at least 2 family holidays a year.
Yes.
That would not be negotiated about. Or whatever. And every long weekend we would be away somewhere. My dad was always finding something. He's a very energetic guy, so he always was taking us away on holidays and long
more
weekends
camping or
and so
more
on. Camping, actually. My dad loved camping, but also just no matter what accommodation we could find,
Yes.
if he could get away with his kids and his wife. Even I remember us driving for a normal weekend from Johannesburg to Durban just for the weekend.
Whoa.
Because he had a flat. Yeah, that's 600 and something k's. So he had a flat in the center of Durban.
Yes.
And he would just say, "Listen, pack. I'll be at home within the next hour or two. We're leaving there, and we'll pack. All of us would just get everything together, and there we'll go." And actually, at that stage, my dad would phone my now father-in-law,
yes,
which is a very good friend of his, and we would just, the two families would just go for the weekend and we would have fun together for the weekend and leave again on the Sunday afternoon, and they'll be back at work on Monday.
Were they people of faith, your parents?
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, so you grew up in a Christian, traditional sort of Lutheran, Reformed?
No, my dad, I grew up in the AFM Church, Apostolic Faith Mission, which was established by John G. Lake and William J. Seymour in the early 1900s. So very Pentecostal. My dad was, more than anything in our family, there was nothing discussed or talked about or loved or a greater passion than God and the Word and Jesus and what He's done and in my dad's life and my mom's life and my dad's father. I didn't really know my grandfather because he passed away when I was very early. Yes. But my dad used to tell me how much because he was a first generation Christian, not my dad, my grandfather.
Yes.
And my dad used to tell me just what an impact that made on him.
Yes.
Seeing how his father changed. When he encountered the Lord Jesus, and that was, to be honest with you, any discussion, no matter where you started, it would always finish with the Lord. We'll always be talking about the Lord and sharing.
Was he doing any ministry?
No, yes and no, because if that question is asked in terms of was he in ministry, he was an elder in the church, he was always in Sunday school ministry and so on. So yes, there was a lot of ministry. But more than that, the organizational part of ministry, I always say I'll have to live 2 lifetimes to touch the amount of people and to minister to the amount of people that my mom and dad in a auto mechanic workshop did. There's just so many times I can remember where business was just shifted aside and my dad would minister to somebody. My mom would literally address a client over the counter, and she would just know that he's going through a tough time, and everybody, even my dad, would just know this is not business time now, and my mom would just be praying for them. Wow. I saw so much of that. So ministry for me was never an organizational thing. It was never something that happened at church. It was life.
It was life.
Ministry. So that's why I say, in that context, no, in the sense of formal ministry, but in terms of our whole lives, that was what we did.
Wow.
That was what I saw my parents do, day in and day out.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's how I grew up. I feel very privileged about that.
How did you discover your way in the Lord?
I think initially, for me, it was, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. This is our family.
Yeah.
This is where we are on Sundays. We do church.
Yes.
We, on Wednesdays, but there's no question what you do on Wednesdays. We have the prayer meeting.
Oh yeah.
And Fridays we're at youth.
Yeah.
Where youth back then was just everybody under 100.
Yeah.
Sunday mornings church, Sunday evenings church, and if there's anything in between, it will be
rugby.
Yeah, rugby and church.
School and church.
So I grew up in that environment, and because of that, I love that life. Those are my friends. But I also I didn't know the other side really. You saw a bit of it in South Africa. A lot of people are Christians, so I didn't see a lot of the outside world in the context of people that didn't know the Lord and so on. I was sheltered in that context.
Okay.
So I knew of the Lord at a very young age, and then on the 11th of September 1985.
11th of September.
11th of
Ironically.
September 1985.
The towers came down for you.
Yeah. the everything changed for me. I remember being in an evening service, and I can't remember the topic of this sermon, but I do know this, that the appeal that night brought me to a place where I realized that this God, it's not just that he's God, is my parents' Lord and Savior. It's not just someone that I should know about, but he wants to be my God, my Lord, my Savior. And I remember when the altar call came that night, I couldn't get there fast enough. And funnily enough, I was in year 7 back then. For us, it would stand at 5.
Okay. Held 11, 12?
12 years old.
Yes.
And I knelt at the altar, and my second grade Sunday school teacher, she was my Sunday school teacher in the second grade, because we had a massive Sunday school, more than 400 kids in our Sunday school.
Oh.
But she knelt next to me, and she prayed with me a prayer of salvation. Her name is Ann Stevens, Auntie, as we say, South Africans say, Tannie Ann Stevens. She prayed with me, and that night I remember I came back home, and everything just looked different to me. When I got out of that place, it felt to me, it didn't rain, but it smelled like when it, the way it smelled when it just rained, and everything is fresh. The grass, it looked greener. The everything looked different. I saw my city different. I looked at my family different. I remember in sharing with my mom and dad, that was for them the greatest moments in their lives, was seeing their children come to the Lord.
Beautiful.
And at that night, after I shared with my mom, said to me, because one of the things that we always got at the moment you could read is a Bible, your own Bible.
Yeah.
And my mom encouraged me to write in my Bible tonight, on the 11th of September 1985. I gave my heart, I gave my life to the Lord. And I had that Bible for a very, very long time. Unfortunately, it is now somebody else's, because it got lost at one of the conferences that we attended. But I hope it's a blessing to whomever has it now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And where did you meet your wife?
Now that's an interesting story.
You're telling me that you were traveling together, and so this is a bit of a...
that's an interesting one, Nat. The first memory I have of my wife, she was almost 5 years old, and she was sitting on her father's knee, and she was singing. Even back then, as young as she was singing the alto to she was harmonizing with him. And a lot of us were just sitting around and listening, because her father was just a performer. He's just a lovely, godly man. In every opportunity he'd get, he'd sing. And he can sing.
Yeah.
So the first memory I have of my wife was sitting under a veranda outside of one of our youth leaders' homes. And her father was singing, and they were singing the song Butterfly. I don't know if you know Butterfly, but they were singing that, and that's a very, very vivid memory I have of my wife. Was, as I said, she wasn't even 5 years old. I know as family we knew them from even before that, but that was my first memory. So actually, from the age that she was just over 3 years old, my father and her father became very good friends, and I've known my wife all my life.
You were friends growing up. What's the age difference?
4 years.
4 years.
Almost 4 years.
When did you click?
Yeah, that's just as interesting. Actually, I've got my older two sisters. Both of them at one stage dated her brother. She's got two brothers.
Okay.
So me and Lisa, we were never.
So both dated the same guy.
No. My older sister dated her oldest brother at one stage, and my younger sister dated her second brother. Lisa's the youngest, right?
This is gonna be the threesome.
So our siblings dated throughout our history, but me and Lisa never. I'll be honest with you, I didn't see Lisa that way.
No.
For me, it was,
She was
Lisa was very
like a
good
sister.
friends with my twin sisters, my youngest sisters. So she's just a year older than them, and they were just great friends.
Inseparable.
And so for me, it was always almost a just
Family
protection. She was in our house so much.
Yeah.
We had holidays together. We were together at least once or twice a week. We had holidays.
Went to the same church.
Yeah, same church.
Yeah. Same neighborhood.
Dads were inseparable.
Okay.
But my dad and Lisa's dad was inseparable up until the day my father passed away. But so we grew up together. We were never romantically involved.
Yeah.
It was only actually Lisa always said, she was wiser than me. She her side of the story is when she was 12 years old, she had a dream.
Yeah.
Now this is you can ask Lisa, but this is the real truth.
We have to get Lisa on Kingdom Stories.
She was 12 years old, had a dream that she's going to marry me.
Okay.
Right? She woke up that morning,
Yes.
knew that this was something of the Lord, and she never
Shared it with anybody.
she never dated anybody else.
Oh.
Never. And she was pursued by quite a few young men.
I'm sure you didn't mind that.
But but I initially I didn't know, but she knew.
Yeah.
She knew she was going to marry me, and therefore she later on she told me all of this. That's why she just never felt that she would waste her time with anybody else. If that's she felt that God showed her that I'm going to be a husband.
Yeah.
For me, it was a bit different. As any young man. My journey went a bit different. I didn't know, and it's only when after school actually when the Lord called me into ministry, where at one stage I just asked the Lord, said, Lord, I don't want to go on one more date. I don't want to pursue any young woman. I don't want to wander. I ask of you, God, show me my wife.
Yeah.
I remember it was the youth camp, and Lisa was at this youth camp. We were ministering together at that stage, and just before that, I was dating somebody else, and
she knew.
Yeah, she knew about everything. Single girl. She knew me very well, so she knew about every single girl I dated.
Yeah,
and I just asked the Lord, said, Lord, please, and I remember that night saying to the Lord, this is what I want. First of all, she's going to love you with all her heart, and I just, and I was really passionate, and it's a story on its own, but I was really passionate about kids. Don't know why, it's always been like that.
Yeah.
So I asked Lord, I really want somebody that would be a wonderful, godly mother, because I just knew that was part of God's purpose for my life in terms of just not only just bringing up my kids, but being there for children.
Yeah.
And I mentioned all these things, quite a few things I mentioned to him. And this is the truth. I woke up the next morning. Now remember, this girl I've seen numerous times. I mean, we basically, there's nothing about each other that we did not know.
Yeah.
And the next day, because I was organizing this youth camp, almost 200 young people on this youth camp. So it was a lot of organization, people getting on the buses and so on. And Lisa and another friend of ours, they were managing one bus, and people were getting the kids on the bus and so on. And they were the last bus, and I always got on the last bus, making sure that everybody's in and whatnot. And when I wanted to get on the bus, I kid you not, I was so in love, I could not help myself. When I saw Lisa that morning,
your scales came off.
It was as if I'm looking at a different woman, and it was so profound that Lisa actually said to me, when she saw me, she looked at me and she said, "What happened to you?" These were exact words, right? And the rest is history, man. I the scales came off my eyes. God made me fall in love with the most wonderful human being I've met.
Yeah. And you were married in that church?
Yeah, we actually we got married in that church with two congregations that we were involved in, Lisa and myself, in ministering to the small congregation that we became a part of. But yeah, we were married out of that church. My brother-in-law married me. He's also, just a great mentor in my life.
From her side or from your side?
From my side, my sister's husband, my older sister's husband. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's my journey with Lisa's concerned.
And then the children came along. So you were doing ministry now. You went into ministry.
Yeah, we went into ministry actually when I was. This was in 1992. So I was about 21 when we started in ministry together. And this was before me and Lisa got involved. And I actually went to Lisa's dad and asked him if she could, because we didn't have any musicians in our church.
Yes.
And at that stage, for the first time in our lives, we found ourselves in two different congregations because my parents moved to Donata, which is very close to Springs, but my dad felt that we needed to support that small congregation that was there, so we moved congregation. And then I went to Lisa's father and asked him if I could bring her to that congregation. I would come and fetch her every Friday night, to do the youth and so on. So Lisa was 16 back then when she started. She was in year 10 at school.
She was leading worship.
Yeah, she was leading worship.
Wow.
Yeah, so we started ministering together then, and then when the other thing happened, we fell in love, and we.
So she was ready to have a life of ministry and commitment to the kingdom cause.
Well, to answer that question, let me give you the details. Lisa finished school in 1994. She did her year 12. She finished that November.
Yeah.
June we were married. So we as I said, we started young.
Yeah.
And we just knew this was of God, and I think everybody around us knew. And obviously everybody thought, we were maybe a bit quick and a bit young, and especially she was a bit young. But the Lord we knew it's of God, and the Lord was so good to us that even at that young age, He, us being in ministry together and so on, He just sustained us day by day. Yeah.
Wow. And then the children came along.
Yeah. Lisa was 19 when she got married, 20 when she had her first child, Nikkei, and then 13 months after that, Vanine, and then almost 2 years after that, 2 years after that, Peet.
Wow.
So we had...
3 and 4 years.
Yeah. So she was about 22 and she had 3 kids already. So.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So pretty quick. I was young, but we really... We knew that was going to be a big part of our lives, our children and
so what made you come to Australia?
The simple answer, the Lord.
Okay. How did that come about?
We ministered together in different congregations and so on. And
so were you established in one place as a minister?
At first, yes. I was in Donata, close to Springs.
So Pentecostal church, charismatic?
Pentecostal church, or in the AFM church.
So I'm not familiar with that. Is it more traditional Pentecostal?
It's Pentecostal, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, traditional Pentecostal congregation. Maybe not traditional Pentecostal in the sense of, you would think of
evangelical Pentecostal.
Yeah, more evangelical Pentecostal.
Okay. Yeah.
But so at that stage we ministering in Donata, ministered to a few different congregations. The Lord was really good to us when it comes to youth ministry. So we quickly in a short period, the Lord really blessed us ministry wise.
Yeah.
So we found ourselves at that stage. You're talking about Australia. We found ourselves ministering in Donata, then Springs, and then went to Pretoria, and then Cape Town.
Whoa!
So we actually ministered quite. And initially I couldn't understand, because it always seemed like God would either give us somewhere to go where there was nothing, or where everything was going wrong. So and I actually had a frustration in my heart. I said, Lord, what is happening? Every time things are going well, you send me, I feel like a spiritual broom almost. You got to clean things up and just
the mess.
building. And the Lord just made it clear to me that was part
That's
of
your
our
ministry. You're a
ministry. I'm a builder, so I've got to establish things, break down and renew and restore and build it up until somebody can, until it's
destroy it again,
maintainable and they can go on. That I'm not a maintainer in that sense. I'm a builder. Yeah. So while we were in Cape Town, we got called to Bloemfontein. That's the central part of South Africa, the Free State. We had to now find a school for the girls because the girls were at school going age and so on. And that was the first instruction that the Lord gave us. Very Afrikaans. South Africa is Afrikaans, but Bloemfontein is Afrikaans.
It's the most Afrikaans.
It's the most Afrikaans you can find, right? So it's Afrikaans. And strong Afrikaans schools and so on. And when we were looking for schools, the Lord just said, put them in an English school. And He said, because you won't be in the country. I will be sending you off, to another country. So then we knew what was lying ahead. We just didn't know where.
How.
Yes. And then in 2006, at a conference that we did in Argentina, I was then part of Harvest Evangelism with Ed Silvoso and these guys. Really a great season of life. Learned so much from them. But at that conference in 2006, where I was part of just arranging and helping and serving in terms of the stage ministry and getting the speakers there at the right time and whatnot, making sure all of that is right. And we had a team retreat just after that in San Jose. So we went to San Jose. In San Jose, I remember one morning about 3 o'clock, the Lord woke me up and He just literally just laid out this plan. He said, listen, I'm going to send you to Australia. Australia. Send you to Australia, and then He gave me some instruction about what that was all about, and gave me scripture and all of that. And I would always ask the Lord, and that's the way He's dealt with me all of my life, even with my calling. He would give me a scripture, give me peace in my heart, clarity, and then He'd be very clear so I couldn't doubt. And because of that, maybe I always had this boldness to, after all of this, say to the Lord, please, I don't want to doubt, so I'll do whatever You lead me into. Just help me to know that this is You in a way that I can't doubt. Just confirm. Do something out of it, something special. I would always in Afrikaans I would say, Lord, just surprise me. Surprise me in a way that I know this is You. And this is in San Jose, right? And then we were staying with Dave and Sue Thompson, just two of the most beautiful people I know, man. It's just lovely people of God. Such a profound influence in our lives. But we got up the morning and Sue made us breakfast for me and Werner Swart, my brother-in-law. She made us breakfast and then she said, listen, the guy, I know you want to buy the kids some gifts, but the guy across the street is having a garage sale. Maybe there's something, because I know he's got a toy store and whatnot.
This is in Argentina?
No, this is in San Jose in the US, right? This is Silicon Valley, right? So we had the conference in Argentina. The Lord gave us that instruction and then back for
I'm sure there's a San Jose in Argentina as well.
Yeah, definitely. But so then we went to this garage sale. Yeah, we went across the street, and this guy was still packing out the garage sale and so on, and only one table was set up, and there was only one thing on the table.
A map of Australia.
No. A koala bear with an Australian flag in its hand. So I went, the guy goes and says, can I help you? I said, I'm just here to collect my bear. He says, I said, that bear's mine. He says, I haven't told you. I said, no matter what, that's my bear. You just tell me how much I have to pay you. And I actually took that bear and I kept that bear from 2006. Because when I returned in 2006, a congregation in Middelburg, because at that stage I was ministering, working in the Harvest, and I was ministering to the church in the city instead of just in congregational ministry. But then a congregation in Middelburg called us, and we said no 3 times and so on. But in the end we felt we really need to pray about this because we knew we were going to Australia. And then the Lord said, yes, go. So I was confused. I said, God, this is now, I just returned. You told me we're going to Australia now. And then the Lord was very clear. He said, listen, you're going to be here for a short time. I'm going to do something amazing. Just remember, it's not you, but let them know from the beginning that you are just here to restore and establish and that you will set things in place and then go.
Yes.
So for 4.5 years, we were in Middelburg.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2009, the Lord said, okay,
It's time.
it's time. August 2009, the month of my...
So you came by faith.
Yeah, 2009 August, the Lord just said that we should come for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We didn't have a sponsor. We didn't know where to
Just
go.
you and your wife.
No, me and my wife. Actually, when I told my parents,
Yes.
my mom is our intercessor, and she's always
She
praying
said,
for us.
I'll
She
come
said,
with you.
I'm going with you. And my dad literally said, "Listen, I'm coming with you. I just wanna serve you."
Whoa. It's all four of
And
you.
my dad came with. My mom came with. My dad left. My dad never leaves his business.
Sure.
Right. My dad left his business, and for 2 weeks we came to Australia, and I felt so bad. Everywhere we went, we were meeting with people and so on. My dad was just always helping and supporting and serving. To the point where I felt almost,
Let me
yeah,
breathe.
yeah, no. I felt how come my father, I'm supposed to carry the laptop
Sure,
or
for him.
for him, and
Oh.
they just felt that they were with us to see
support
what
you.
God wants
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
And God gave us a promise on that trip. He told us that we should come and visit the major cities in Australia,
Yes.
and in 2 weeks, and before we get on the plane, when we get back, we will have a sponsor.
Uh-huh.
And so we didn't know where this was going to come about, so we went to all the different cities. We actually stopped by for 1 day in Perth, then went to Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and then back.
So you had connections everywhere. So
I had some
families.
connections. I had a family member in Melbourne.
Yeah.
We didn't have anybody really in Sydney. We just travelled with a camper van and,
Yeah.
and visited and prayed a bit over the place. In Brisbane, I knew a few guys from Harvest.
Yeah.
And then some of the guys over here heard that we were here, and they arranged Tim Tay. I don't know if you know Tim, but he arranged a breakfast with some of the people that knew Harvest and knew Ed and so on.
Yeah.
So he got a few guys together and asked me to just share with them a little bit at a breakfast, and I shared with them just on unity in the body and so
Yeah.
on. And at that breakfast, one of the guys that were there were Benny Ho, and he said to me after we shared, he said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Yeah, I can remember your face, And he said, "Listen, I've got a photo here in 2006. You told us that the Lord gave you a word for Australia, and you don't know when, but you will be. And we had lunch with you." He said, and he actually showed me the photo.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Can we have a
Where,
coffee?"
where did you meet before? He was in South Africa.
He was in Argentina at the
Oh,
conference.
in Argentina. Same
Yeah.
conference.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Benny Ho and Peter, his elder, that was at this conference,
Mm-hmm.
and so Benny asked to have coffee the next day. We had coffee, and at the coffee, while we were having coffee, it was at a shopping centre in Willetton. I can't remember the name now, South something Mall. But Benny asked me, "Do you have how are you going to get South?" Yeah. So he said, "Do you have a sponsor?" And I said, "No, please pray for us."
Yes.
He said, "No, we already talked about it. We'll sponsor you."
Whoa.
And this guy has met me once,
Yes.
2006 at a conference,
Yeah.
and FCC Faith Community Church and Benny Ho sponsored us into the country just through what God has placed and
Deposited
put
in
on
your
their
heart.
heart and placed in our hearts, and
And not for themselves,
not for themselves.
to release you into planting the church up here.
They literally, I shared with Benny, I said, "Benny, you know that I'm not, just congregationally minded. I would love to minister, to the city and just help and support and see the unity and prayer and so on, just established and ministers fellowships and so on." He said, "No, I know, with no expectation, just come, do what God has called you to do."
What a miracle.
And they FCC Faith Community Church became our home.
Mm-hmm.
For 3.5 years. They were just such a blessing to us, and in that time we found that the Lord also had a plan for us to be in that congregation. We really got involved in discipling some of their young leaders and so on, and we journeyed together still today. Benny's a very, very dear friend and a godly man, just an inspiration in my life.
And that out of that you planted Kingsway.
Yeah. So as I said, we just initially I was just trying to find out where exactly the ministers and the pastors were praying together. So for 2 years, I would just travel from fellowship to fellowship, just praying with them.
Yeah.
And then we went to a Hillsong's conference with Pastor Patrick Chan.
Mm-hmm.
They invited us, and me and Lisa, and they just, sponsored us, and it was such a blessing to us. They took us to the Hillsong's conference, and while we were there, the Lord gave me a clear instruction to plant the congregation, and shared with us what He wanted us to do, and then came back, shared it with Benny, and Benny, at that stage, they were, Benny just said, well, if that's what God has called you to do, tell us how can we help. And they supported us and helped us plant a congregation.
Wow, that's beautiful.
That was our journey.
Fast forward to today, you've got a couple of hundred people, 250 people connected with the church.
Mm.
You meet at Kingsway Christian College, in their gymnasium.
Yeah.
They really built a nice auditorium for you, didn't they?
They did.
Multi-million-dollar one.
Man, that was such a blessing as well. When we started the congregation, when the Lord gave me the instruction at the Hillsong's conference, He even showed me the families that we will be starting with.
Yes.
And 2 of those families were not in Australia at that stage. but by the time we started, they were.
From South Africa?
From South Africa. Wow. So we established the congregation.
So how many families did you start off with?
4 families.
4 families in your home?
In my home.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you start it at Kingsway School or in a gym, or where did you start it?
So we started it in my home in, a home that we were house sitting for a friend of mine. And it was big enough.
Yes.
Actually a 5-bedroom mansion with it was just a big place that we were house sitting for very dear friends of ours. And then we realized that even when we started, we prayed about it, and we realized that we've got to book a venue. Yeah. We were just 4 families, 5 families with my family included. And then we went to the school and asked if we could book a space, and they availed the gym to us. And we started in the gym on Sunday evenings.
And the gym is quite big, so it felt a bit too spacious.
One of the things that was really a profound experience for me, in South Africa, I was involved in different kinds of ministries. So in some, less comfortable, some more comfortable. Yeah. So last season and few years of ministry for us was really comfortable. Really, the Lord really blessed us. So for us here, and then being part of FCC and then planning a church, after about 6 or 7 months, I remember coming from a service the one Sunday evening, and there was 12 people in the congregation.
In the hall?
Yeah, there were 12 people in the hall. I packed out
one team.
40 chairs, but there was...
It was only one team, but you needed 2.
Yeah.
You could play the game.
Out of the 12 people that specific Sunday evening, and it was constant. It was just these families, and it's as if we struggled, But I remember God saying to me, "Disciple these families.
Sure,
this is what I've given you." But that evening, I was very frustrated, locking up. It was dark, and I remember just being frustrated and driving back on Kingsway, and just saying to the Lord, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
What is going on? And as clear as day, I just remember this. The Lord just dropped it in my spirit. If this is what I have for you, do you have a problem with that? If this is what I want you to do, you say you don't care about numbers or this or that.
Yeah.
Is it really true? Is it
ironic?
Do you have a problem?
Yeah.
If these are the people that I want you to minister to.
Yeah.
And it was as if a weight just dropped off of me, and I realized that I'm not. Who do I want to please?
It's not performance based.
Who do I want to show? Even myself. What do I want to prove to myself?
Right.
I just want to please Him.
Yeah.
If this is what God wants, this is what I'll do, even if until Jesus comes.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just had the most wonderful time just discipling these families that God gave me.
Yeah.
And today, those families, except for 1 or 2 that are now on the East Coast, but those families and 2 other families that joined very early on, they form our leadership.
Yeah. What a journey.
Yeah, they're still with us.
So that was a challenge. What was your biggest challenge in Australia? Could you pinpoint something?
Yes. Maybe less ministerial, more personal.
Yeah.
Our biggest challenge in Australia was coming over from South Africa. Today I'm always ashamed to say it, but this is true. I really didn't think that it mattered to me who I was, in South Africa, with what God did and what God gave us the privilege to minister into in terms of ministry wise. But when we arrived here, and you start over.
Zero.
In the middle
Ground
of your
zero.
life,
In
you
fact,
start
minus
over.
zero.
Not only nobody knows you, you don't. Your family's not here. You don't have people that you connect with. I was in a
love.
I had this beautiful Singaporean community that loved us and supported us, but we still felt. I still almost lost myself in all of that and wondered who I was.
Yeah.
And in that time, while I was getting back to the roots of why it is that I do what I do. I mean, when God called me, it was nothing, no congregation, no ministry. It was just God and me. And this is what he gave me to do. That's how I started off in ministry. So he brought me back to that. And in that time, Lisa went through a very, very challenging time with the same struggle in her heart. So much so that at one stage, I didn't know if she was going to stay, if she was going to go. Marriage-wise, we were going well in terms of we knew we loved one another and so on. But she was just so alone, and she was so disconnected for herself that at one stage I just said to her, "Listen, I can't cry anymore with you. I can't." It was really very draining, very difficult time. And I remember in that time, we just really grabbed onto the Lord and really just dug our heels in, and I couldn't do anything else but just put her in His hands and pray for her. And I remember for a long time, it was as if for quite a while, things was just so quiet for Lisa. She was always on a piano, and at that stage for months there was nothing. It was
silence.
There was just silence, and the Lord started, just renewing her and giving her purpose and her desire again here in Australia, and He made her fall in love with those Singaporean young youths. She became known in Faith Community Church as Mama Lisa.
Wow.
These teenagers were just
Mama Lisa. And I saw the Lord just really just realigning her with His purpose, and the Lord really there brought us together in a deeper sense of unity that we've ever had before. And He gave her, in Afrikaans, but He gave her a few songs in that time that really just depicted what we were going through. So the most difficult time for me, the biggest challenge for me in Australia, was that very, very personal challenge where God really just took us as a couple and us as a family and realigned us with His purpose. But we were going through a tough time, and that's for sure. And you survived, and that made you stronger.
Yes.
It's interesting that the darkest seasons of our lives do bring out the best in us.
Oh, for sure.
If you're resilient, if you stand in that storm and don't give up, that's just amazing. But what's also very interesting with this story you're sharing here is the fact that this journey was together.
Yeah.
God, you weren't in your ministry on your own, and she wasn't on her own. It was a joint ministry. You had personal struggles, but there was an aspect of that joint effort as well. Where the alignment was personal, but it was also for both of you.
Oh, for sure.
To prepare you for the season ahead. And Australia is not an easy land to plant a church.
Oh, yeah.
And the culture here is totally different than South Africa. That honor culture, that hard, working, military, regimented culture is not, that doesn't exist here. Yeah. People are relaxed. People are, they've got so many choices. They change churches, no problem. In South Africa, if you change church, it's the biggest crime you could have done.
Yeah.
Whereas here, if they can change church 10 times a year, nobody says anything.
Yeah.
So it is different. It is different, and I feel with that because we've experienced similar challenges as well, and a lot of the people that I talk to. But you know what's interesting? You look at the pastors in our city here today, in Perth, in Western Australia, and most of these pastors are not Australian.
I know that there's a lot of pastors that.
Well,
are
I was
Australian,
just
but
at a pastors' prayer meeting over the city.
Yeah.
We were about 160 to 170 pastors in there.
Yeah.
Probably 70+% were non-Australians.
Wow.
Which is,
Which
is just very interesting. And I'm asking, why is the Lord bringing so many people from so many nations and so many leaders from so many nations? He must love Australia. He must have a purpose for this. And sometimes it does come from within, but a lot of the times it has to come from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So the purpose that the Lord has for you here is probably bigger than we realize. And what you're setting into motion, it's not just, what happens today at Kingsway Christian Church, but it's what you're setting into motion for the generations to come is probably more important than what we realize. And your kids are here and your grandkids are here.
Yeah.
And, those kids that you see in church every Sunday. Yeah, talking about that, what's the legacy you'd like to pass on to them?
Yeah, so for us, that what you've just said, that was clear to me from the very start. As I told you, I was crazy about kids. I remember I was 13 years of age when I thought it would be the greatest thing to be a dad.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but that was my thought process. And right throughout our ministry, we just felt the Lord always saying to us, just remember, these are your first disciples. Minister to your wife and your children first. So we implemented a few things in our lives that really helped us hold on to that. So we can never save anybody, let alone our kids. And our kids know us best. And I always felt that if I minister to others on a Sunday, they just know me on a Sunday or see me as pastor. But my kids don't see the Lord in my life. If they can't see that He is truly my life's desire, who else should I want to convince if that's not the case within them? Now they have their own choice and so on, but for me, that's always been our greatest desire for me and Lisa, just to disciple our children first and bring them to the Lord and show them His goodness and His grace and His mercy and who He is in our lives. And today we are so grateful that by His grace, our kids, we've seen our kids fall in love with the Lord, one by one throughout the years, and they are passionate about Him. Actually, we're in a season where we realize, as the Lord shared with me in San Jose when He told us about Australia, that this is more about our kids, more about the generations to come than it is about us. We are here for a purpose, for a reason, to establish again things that pioneer again some things that He's got to do. In that difficult time that I spoke to you about, me and Lisa were talking, she was saying, but we have nobody here. It's just us here. And I remember I said to her, you know what? It takes one generation to do something.
Sure.
To establish something. And remember, my kids were then 14 and 13 years of age. Yeah. And I said to her, before you know it, these two, our kids will be married. Yeah. I said, and our grandkids will be running around in our home just knowing that their parents were from Australia and from South Africa. And my wife the other day, the extended families there, we can't even fit all of them around one table and so on. We were just going, you know what? Time flies, man. It's truly, it's tribal. You just have to do what
patriarchal. You got to think. In patriarchal terms.
Minister to the generation that is. There's a generation that is growing up in our homes. Yeah. And if there's something that I'm very passionate about, we want to go over land and sea, and missions here and there. And so, I think the greatest challenge for the church in our day is to again rekindle the fire of God within our families. To be so faithful and godly in our relationships and in our marriages that our children can see the love, the grace, the authority, the truth of God in our homes. Yeah. So that we don't get all of these statistics where we do all of these programs, but we lose our kids. Yeah. I don't even want to start talking about this.
You're very passionate. I'm very passionate about this. In fact, the Lord quickened me the other day, about 3 or 4 days ago. I was praying about this, about Australia, and he said to me, Natanael, Australia is in free fall at the moment. In free fall. It hasn't hit the bottom yet, but it is in free fall because it has become faithless, fatherless, and feminist. And you know, the church doesn't speak enough about these three. That's the free fall of Australia. And if you look historically, the facts are there, the evidence is there to prove it.
Very true.
And for you to focus on the family, I think it's very, very vital. And it's beautiful, and I hope that those people who are watching this or listening to this will embrace this responsibility and put on the mantle of priesthood and the fatherhood and the motherhood in their homes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Peet.
Such a pleasure.
Wisdom, a lot of wisdom. Well, thank you so much for joining us at Kingdom Stories from Down Under. What an amazing journey Peet has had, and also the legacy that he wants to pass on to the generations that follow. And I think we should take this on. Start with the family. Start with your family. Start presenting the Lord. Take on the responsibility that you have in your home, whether you're a mom, a dad, maybe a grandpa, a grandma, or even a son who needs to help their parents, his parents or her parents, a daughter, to get closer to the Lord. Whatever it is, do your part in your family to lead them to Jesus. If you're enjoying this content, please distribute it wider and wider. We want it to reach more and more places around the world. Do rate us, do comment. We love the 5 stars that we are receiving. There's quite a few 5 stars now on Apple Podcasts. And if you could do that as well, we would be very, very grateful. We thank you that you're sharing this content and that you're praying for us. And we'll be more than excited to bring you more Kingdom Stories from Down Under in a week's time. Bless you.
Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Stories from Down Under. We'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and share these stories with your wider community. And remember, every story is worth sharing, including yours.